What do you think about technology? And since we're on this pulling this thread, and I don't know how much thought you've put into it, but an AI taking away all the jobs and being so smart that nobody has any work anymore, and we need universal basic income for everybody to give them money because there's just no jobs available for them to do.
What do I think? Man, I think the only thing that's unlimited is human ingenuity and human desire. I think we always want what we can't have, and no matter what you take away and automate, in our infinite creativity, we'll find something else to do with ourselves. So I bucket AI into the same category as every single prior automation that we had, from the plow through to the tractor, through to everything else. Like, what we've done is we've automated things. And look, there's a cost to all automation. You and I spoke about this in Prague, right? Like, if you sort of build a factory to automate the creation of a trinket, what'll happen over a couple generations is we'll lose the physical dexterity to build it with our own hands. Like, we'll lose the craftsmanship, but we will have gained the ability to mass produce those things. Is that better or worse? Depending on which way you look at it. Everything sort of has a cost. What that will do, though, is if you create the factories that mass produce these things and all this sort of stuff, it'll actually create the desire for the people to build it with their hands, and it'll create a marketplace for the artisans to come and train themselves up again. So, like, every time you create a vacuum of something, the human condition drives us towards wanting to recreate the thing that we're missing.
Yeah.
And kind of what I said earlier about social media and social networks. Like, we've gone and created all this social media, like the trend went that way, and now there's a vacuum for social networks. You would not believe the amount of people I talk to. They're like, man, all I want to do is open up an app and find a place to eat that my friends have recommended. I open up Instagram and I realize 1 hour later that I'm still fucking scrolling.
Yeah.
Why? And it's like, so now I want to sort of fill that vacuum with something else. So I feel like the idea that AI is going to take it all away and we need UBI and all that sort of stuff, I think it's a gross misunderstanding of the human condition.
Yeah.
I think the human condition is much more complex.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100% on that. When we wrote the Communist Manifesto, you had used the word Luddite, and I wasn't even super familiar with what that word was, but this is the same argument as the Luddites, which were afraid that technology would take away all the jobs. And this is now the sixth technological revolution that we've gone through, and every single one, people were afraid of it taking away all the jobs. And I think it's warranted because there is disruption. Jobs are taken, but new jobs are created. And so I think it's a lack of understanding, to your point, like sort of the human condition, but it's also a lack of understanding of how capitalism works. And so each wave creates entirely new sectors that we didn't know about. So you're thinking about things in a vacuum. Well, it gets rid of all these jobs. Yes, but it creates all these new ones that we didn't even think about. So all of a sudden now we have automobiles. And so we have this entire automobile industry that wasn't there before the car. So they did put the buggy makers out of business. But look how big the automobile industry is today, right? Software, the internet. And so it creates industries that we haven't even thought of. But what it also does is it creates consumer demand that wasn't there. So we have lower costs and higher quality. And then we get larger markets, which then creates more jobs because of that. So like when in the 80s, when cell phones were just made, they were like big bricks and I don't know, they were 30 grand or whatever. Hardly anybody had them. But today, look how many people probably on Amazon make money just selling like cases for an iPhone. Totally. That, you know what I mean? And so it's like more cheaper, better, larger markets, more jobs. And so, yeah, in a vacuum, yes, it takes away those jobs, but look how many more get created on every single one. So all of the facts, all of the data points to that. There is no basis for thinking that there is no future of that. And the last thing I'd say is back to that human condition. If you think about it, the only reason why we'd ever give somebody money is if they've provided value, which is typically solved the problem for me. I'm hungry, they solve my hunger, I give them food, etc. And so they're solving problems, right? And I don't imagine any future where humans no longer have problems.
Totally. Yeah, problems are infinite.
Right? And
problems are infinite.
You just solve one problem, you get the next problem, right? So it's like there's just no future for that.
So long as we have women in the world, problems are infinite. So I always tease my wife about this. I'm like, everything is fine. And then like all of a sudden something will like go wrong. She'll be like, I'm freaking out about something. But I think, look, the reality is like let me give one little example before we move on. Is even let's take this to the extreme, like AI and robotics and all this sort of stuff, figure out how to do everything, like provide you with food and, you go to a restaurant, everything is automated, there's no one in the kitchen, none of this sort of stuff. I guarantee you in that kind of a world, the person who goes and opens up a restaurant and says, we have no AI, no robots, and we have paper menus, that restaurant would fucking pump.
Right.
Everyone will be there because they're going to want the handmade food. Like literally every single innovation in one direction creates a vacuum in another. And I think that's the part that people need to sort of internalize when they're trying to understand this, is that human beings are infinitely creative. And in our infinite creativity, we create infinite problems. And then we need to create infinite numbers of solutions to those problems. No amount of AI can ever deal with infinity. It doesn't matter how good the AI gets. We will always come up with something new to do and some different nuance or variation to do it in. And that means there'll be a need, there'll be a demand, and there'll be a supply to fill that. Simple as that.